Grab your tablet and your favorite whip. This is the Battle of the Cross-Stitch apps. Hey everyone, I'm Jackie from Adam Heart Cross Stitch, and this video is all about the two most recommended apps to track your cross-stitch charts. Pattern Keeper and MarkUp RX-P. On one of my more recent videos, I was singing the praises of Pattern Keeper because I really truly love that app. But every time I bring it up, I have to make note of the one kind of big caveat, which is it's only available on Android devices. And for years now, whenever I bring that up, I will get flooded in my comment sections talking about a newer app that works on Apple devices called MarkUp RX-P. Now, I myself am an Apple user. I'm not saying it's the right opinion to have, but it's just my personal preference. So while I've been kind of interested to hear about this app that also works on Apple and is comparable to Pattern Keeper, I've been pretty hesitant to try it. And that's because I have tried other apps in the past and they have not even come close to the capabilities that Pattern Keeper has. But you all have finally worn me down in the comment section of my videos. So today I am going to do an in-depth side-by-side comparison of the two. Is MarkUp RX-P just as good as Pattern Keeper? I've been testing it all week long and I'm ready to give you my honest, unfiltered opinion on it. First up, let's talk availability. So as I just mentioned, you can only download Pattern Keeper through the Google Play Store. So that is automatically going to limit the number and types of devices you can use to run Pattern Keeper. MarkUp RX-P, on the other hand, is available both through the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't have a tablet, I don't want to use it on my tablet, I would rather use my computer, they're both evenly matched there. You would still need to run an emulator on your laptop or PC to run either of those apps on your computer. And as we're talking a little bit more on the technical side of these apps, you might be thinking about syncing across your devices. And they are both evenly matched in that department. With both apps, anywhere that you're logged in across multiple devices, whether it's with your Google account or your Apple ID, that app can be running on that device. What neither app will do though is sync your chart progress across your devices. So if I'm working on my chart on my phone and then I want to open it up later on my iPad, it's not going to be an automatic sync to save my most recent progress. You do need to export your chart and then import it each time. And that's for both apps. So while both apps are evenly matched in some aspects, MarkUp RX-P is going to take the point here because you can get it on both Apple and Android devices. So let's talk pricing because neither app is free. Both apps will give you a 2-week free trial so you can download the app, play around with it, and even do a comparison all on your own, no strings attached. Now, once that 2 weeks is up, Pattern Keeper is going to charge you a one-time fee. I'm filming this video right now in November 2025, so just keep in mind these numbers might change. But right now, that one-time fee is around $9 US. Now, Pattern Keeper is a Swedish-based app, so that is also based on the current exchange rate. But you pay it that one time, and that's it. You have Pattern Keeper for a lifetime. Now, MarkUp RX-P, on the other hand, when your 2-week trial period is over, they will charge you around a $20 annual subscription fee. So you're charged that $20 each and every year. MarkUp is a UK-based app, so if you are in the US like I am, again, it's around $20 US, but that can change based on current exchange rates. Now, MarkUp justifies that annual subscription by stating, they're constantly improving upon the app, fixing any bugs, and they offer tech support. And I'm not here to argue whether they should or shouldn't charge an annual fee. Like, I personally think for either app, charging an annual fee is totally justified for what you get out of it. But Pattern Keeper also offers the same things. They have tech support, they're constantly improving upon the app and releasing new updates, and you get all of that with the one-time fee. So I think it goes without saying, when it comes to price, Pattern Keeper is the clear winner. So with some of the technical aspects and pricing out of the way, let's upload a pattern into each app so we can compare the upload process and speed. Now, what I've done to really try and make this a fair comparison is I've created a pattern of my own. It's fairly large, it spans multiple pages, has over 100 different symbols and thread colors. So let's go ahead and walk through the upload process for both apps. So starting with Pattern Keeper, and I am running this on a Samsung Tab A7 Lite, I believe. All right, but we open Pattern Keeper up. We can see our charts right here. To add a new one, we will hit that little plus sign. And we're going to open this from a PDF file. Now, this is going to sync to my Google Drive where I have my patterns stored. And now it's going to take a minute to just read through that PDF. Keep in mind, this is a fairly large chart. Now here, as it reads the chart, it's going to have some questions for us. Does the chart below have any shaded or lightly colored rows or columns at the edges? It does not. The questions that it asks will also sometimes just depend on how it's reading the chart. So here it's showing us the mock-up of the chart. We'll go ahead and go to this next arrow. And this is Pattern Keeper. So we see all of our thread colors and symbols here. And as we zoom in, it's really easy to see just how well this uploaded. And when we go back to our home screen, now we have our chart right here. All right, so now on to MarkUp RX-P, and I am running this app on an iPad. I'm going to go ahead and select the app down here. Very similarly, we have a home screen with our current charts loaded. Down here in the corner, I will select Add New Project. There's some options here. I'm going to select PDF and image files, go to my recents, and I've got a PDF here to click on. So here we see it's processing. And now it asks you these questions each and every time. It's essentially just verifying the information that it's reading. So here, any pages that are a part of the actual chart we want in green, and it did it correctly. So we will go ahead and hit next. Now it's double checking the layout of the chart pages. Again, it did read this correctly. If it were incorrect, you could change it up here though, but this is right. So we'll hit next. Now it's asking about any overlap. My chart does not have any overlap, but if it did, usually it will have some columns or rows that are shaded. And here it would just be asking you how many are shaded, which is indicating that overlap. So we'll hit next. Again, no overlap. So here now it's asking us to select the key pages. Again, it's done a really good job of reading which pages are the key. This chart has it in both color and black and white, but we only need the color. So I will unselect those and click next. And now it's asking us which is the picture page, which again, it's done a good job of reading. We'll click next. And now it's uploading the symbol. Here, it's just having you double check the symbols and colors. We'll hit done. All right, so now let's take a look. So here on MarkUp, when we zoom in, I don't know how well it's reading on the camera, but these symbols are actually very fuzzy. That's me zoomed in as much as I can be. Now, I was, really disappointed about this when I first loaded a chart into MarkUp, especially on charts like this where there's so many different colors. It's actually really hard to distinguish between some of the different symbols, like this one here and then this one here. So I did some digging and found out that there's actually a different way to import your projects, which I will show you now. So let's go ahead and delete this one. Okay, delete. Yes. All right, so what you need to do is come in here to app configuration. And here there's a choose chart import quality. There's standard and extra. We're going to select extra and then redo it. And then here it's just ensuring we want extra mode enabled, going back to the same exact chart. And at least from what I've noticed, I don't think the extra mode takes all that much longer. So I really don't know or understand why they don't just have one upload mode that is going to read the charts better. So same questions as before. And again, I think it's still pretty fast. But hopefully now you can see the difference of how much clearer these symbols are. Now they're nice and clear. You can clearly see the difference between this symbol and that symbol. Now, again, when I did my first upload into MarkUp, I was having that issue with the fuzzy symbols. And I was even noticing that when I selected two that looked very similar to each other, it was actually selecting extra symbols, like it would look like that, for example. So they do have this symbol detection sensitivity filter, which helps with that. So if you are also running into that issue, it does look like if you adjust this, it's gonna pick up, different symbols based on that sensitivity. Now, I uploaded a ton of different types of patterns into both of these apps to really give it a fair shake. But the pattern that we just walked through is what is called a Pattern Keeper compatible pattern. So what you're watching is really like best case scenario when uploading a pattern into Pattern Keeper. We are going to talk more about that in the next segment. Now, when we're just talking about the speed of uploading a pattern, I did feel like generally MarkUp was a little bit faster, but that was also before I was able to figure out why all of my uploads were turning out so fuzzy that I could barely distinguish the symbols from one another. And it just wasn't intuitive to figure out how to configure the app to avoid that. Again, I had to go online and watch like a whole tutorial to really understand that process. I do feel like Pattern Keeper is more intuitive. That being said, we just watched best case scenario of uploading a PDF pattern into Pattern Keeper. But many times if you're uploading a non-compatible PDF pattern, there are a lot more steps with the upload process. Maybe MarkUp has the slight edge here. I think for me, it's kind of a wash. But on that note, let's jump in to pattern compatibility. So if you're already familiar with Pattern Keeper, you're likely already aware of their list of supported designers. Now, these are cross-stitch chart makers that they specifically work with to ensure that their PDF patterns are going to work in Pattern Keeper. On the other hand, MarkUp claims to work with most any PDF pattern and is not limited to specific designers. And if you're even having an issue with a specific PDF chart and uploading it into MarkUp RX-P, you can send them the chart and they will investigate it for you. Now, I don't have the same amount of hours put in with MarkUp RX-P as I do Pattern Keeper, so I can't fully speak to whether MarkUp really truly reads nearly any PDF pattern you put in there. But what I can say about Pattern Keeper is, at least for me personally, I've uploaded tons of charts that were not by supported designers and had great success getting those into Pattern Keeper. Now, the big caveat there, especially with larger charts, is it can take a lot of time to do that initial setup when it's a non-supported designer. In a lot of instances, you may need to manually input each and every thread number to the corresponding symbol. And sometimes you even have to manually set your grid across each one of your pages. And it can be time consuming. But when you take the time to set it up that right way initially, there's virtually no problems using it after that. So I think that general threshold for what is acceptable or not acceptable when working with these non-supported designers is really going to be like a personal preference. But as I mentioned in the initial step when we were uploading the patterns, I generally was having issues with MarkUp correctly reading all of the symbols on my chart. Now, once I figured out that I could upload my charts using their extra mode, I had not since run into that problem. So assuming that that was just a fluke with MarkUp and is a non-issue in reality, I would give the win to MarkUp on this one. However, if that is a more frequent occurrence for people using MarkUp XP, where sometimes the symbols are not reading correctly, then I would call it a wash between the two. And now perhaps what I think is the most important aspect of using these apps is the user interface. So we went through the upload process for each of these apps, but the real bread and butter is going to be the interface, how well they work, how intuitive they are. And for me going into this was where I was really questioning if MarkUp could even come close to doing what Pattern Keeper does. So let's start navigating our chart and take a look at them both. So once again, let's navigate into the Pattern Keeper app. On our home screen, we have all of our charts here. Let's go ahead and open our most recent one. And you can see it's already landed us exactly where we were last time we closed the app. So when you open Pattern Keeper, this is your view. You essentially have all of your symbols and the corresponding thread number here. And then here you have how many total stitches of that color exist on the chart. And you have some sort options here. You can go in numerical order, either lowest to highest or highest to lowest. You can also sort by the total number of stitches. So here we can see which numbers occur the least, and then we can sort it in the opposite direction to see which ones occur the most. Now, typically when I'm stitching, I don't want to see this, so I will just close it out of the way so I can see more of my chart. Typically, you're always defaulted here in zoom mode, which lets you navigate the entirety of your chart. And you can zoom out or zoom in as much as you need. When you are searching for a symbol, you put on your search mode, and then you can see any symbol you select will highlight for you, and it highlights across the entire chart. And then up here in the top corner, you can see the symbol, the thread number, and it shows you the thread color there. When you want to complete a stitch, you select that little highlight button. When you're here and you have a symbol selected, you can only click on the symbol that you're working with. I've now selected those 5 there. And if I click this little check mark, it will fill them in here with the color of the thread that it is. So now if I search for another symbol, you can see this one occurs quite a lot. If I don't want to individually input each one, I can select all unfinished highlighted stitches in the square. I can even select all of the highlighted stitches across the whole page. Click my checkbox, and then it will fill them in across that whole page like I had just selected. We do also have some settings here that we can play around with. If you want to use translucent colors for your finished stitches, you can do that. That way you can still see the symbol underneath it. Use a flat color. This essentially, if you don't want to use the thread color for your finished stitches and just want to use a single color like black or red or something like that, you can select that there. You can change the symbol color that you're using when you're searching for symbols. And just some more color options here, like your parking color, selection color. You can choose which lines you would like to show. For those of you that like to stitch on the diagonal, you can also have diagonal lines showing here, and you can choose which direction they go in. My favorite option here is the shortcuts setting. So what I like to do in move mode is double click on a single stitch, and it will search and highlight the symbol for you. And in markup mode, when I double click on a single stitch, I like to have it set to park a thread. And I like to park my thread in the lower right corner. So I'll show you what that looks like now. So here you can see we now have the translucent colors here. We can see the symbols underneath. Previously it was opaque. So now that I'm in move mode, what I can do, I just set this shortcut, is if I double click that symbol, now it selected it for me without me needing to go to the search section. And now that I'm in search and clicking on a symbol, or again, now we can do it from move mode. If I now want to park a stitch, let's say I completed all these stitches and now I want to park my stitch here, I just double tap and you can see it has that little arrow there to indicate a park stitch. If you don't set a shortcut, you can also just select it, do more, and then park your thread in whichever corner you want. Now, if I wanted to frog a stitch, say I need to undo that whole section, I just select it, and then there's a little frog symbol here to unmark those stitches. Now, if I was looking at this chart, but I needed to kind of reference the image to maybe make sense of something that I'm looking at, the only way to do that in Pattern Keeper is to actually navigate back to your home page, and then you'd have to view your PDF. So now I can see the whole PDF. I have my reference image, and then I actually have the entire original chart as well. So now let's take a look at MarkUp RX-P. So again, our home screen, just like Pattern Keeper, we have our charts. Something a little bit extra we have here along the top. You can see we have all our charts, but you can also navigate to charts you have done, charts you're actively doing, charts you've kitted, and even your wish list. But let's go ahead and open up the chart we just imported. And again, it took us back right to where we were when we last left the app. So we're also here defaulted to our pan or zoom mode. Something a little bit different with markup is it's not that kind of just only the view of the chart. So here it's actually page by page, and then you navigate between the pages, or you can toggle to the full chart view if you prefer that. Personally, I would always be in the full chart view. And as you zoom in, you can start to see your symbols. Now, again, we imported this on the extra mode. I do think the clarity of the symbols is not as high as it is with Pattern Keeper. Now, when you want to find a symbol, you have your bar for the symbol detection sensitivity. I'm gonna have to zoom down a little bit more. You can see I am having a little bit of issue with the interface. But we scroll down there to get that bar out of the way. Now, when I search for a symbol, just like with Pattern Keeper, you can see the symbol, the thread color, and the thread number up at the top. Now, if I want to mark my completed stitches, I'm going to switch to markup mode. Just like with Pattern Keeper, if I have a symbol selected, it's only going to let me mark up the symbols that I have selected. And then that's it. There's no additional click to note that these are completed. It's just that initial touch. And if I touch it again, it will show it as not completed. Now a little bit different, you do have some more view options here at the bottom. So right now we're in the markup view. If you want to toggle to your key, you can see your original key here as well as the markup generated one. When I navigate to pictures, I have my reference photo right there. I've also got this info tab with this really cool dashboard, which we will talk more about later. But again, back in markup mode, like Pattern Keeper, we also have some settings we can play with. If you were having an issue with your initial setup of the project, like the grid is off or something's wrong with the symbols, you can reset those things here. You've got some options with your grid display. You can also show diagonal lines and, change the thickness of the lines, things like that. And you also have some options with your symbol settings. If you want it to be a circle or a square, if you want to outline or highlight it when you're selecting your symbols. And now not only do you have some options with whether your stitched symbols are translucent or not, but you can also decide how translucent you want them. There's light, medium, or solid. Here we do also have some kind of like bulk functions. So we can mark up stitches across the whole page. That's all of the stitches on the page. So you can see the page we were on, it did that. You can also just mark up the selected symbols on the page, just like that. And you could say, you can see I changed some of those settings. We now have circles when we're searching, and it's now opaque instead of translucent for the marked stitches. Now, when you select a symbol, this bar that pops up every time, it really drives me nuts because it always ends up getting in the way of the chart. But when you're on symbol selection, if I start selecting other symbols, it like starts linking them all together. Now you can undo it, but I just don't love that. From all the tutorials I've watched on MarkUp R-XP, I think they have this like that for a reason. It's just not one that is really working in my brain. But if you want to clear your symbol selection, you have to press the symbol thing again. So if I'm selecting that symbol, I can't just click a different symbol to select that symbol. I have to clear it each and every time. I'm sure it's something you get used to when you use the app. I have to admit, it's been driving me nuts. If you're in the markup section and you don't have a symbol selected, you can mark up all the stitches you want, which is great. Pattern Keeper is the same. Again, the only difference is there's not like a confirmation that I want these selected. Once they're selected, that's it. And if I tap them again, they're frogged. Now in markup, if I wanted to park a stitch, you can do that also. So what you would do is long hold on the square that you're wanting to park your stitch. And you can see there's some actions here. So I would select park bottom left, and it's just like Pattern Keeper essentially, where it's having that triangle to show where the parked stitch is. You can't, however, select any type of shortcut where you double click or anything like that. It is that long hold and press each and every time. Wait for the menu to pop up, and then you have to decide where you're going to park it each and every time. But that is the markup interface in a nutshell. Now, I think it goes without saying, both of these apps are absolutely incredible, and huge kudos to both of the designers. For someone like me who likes to work on full coverage cross-stitch charts, I don't think I would be able to do it without an app like this to help me navigate. And as I kind of dive into my thoughts, you have to keep in mind, I am biased. I have been using Pattern Keeper for years. I've been using MarkUp for a week. So I can appreciate I'm biased, and I just want you to also keep that in mind as I give you my thoughts. For me, Pattern Keeper is way more intuitive. Now, in part, that could be because it does a little bit less. But I think MarkUp is almost doing too much, where it really is negatively impacting the user experience. That might be a very controversial take, Again, from the tutorials I've watched on MarkUp R-XP, the developers seem very, very intentional. So I do think all of the capabilities that are there are probably there for good reason, but I don't know. That symbol selection thing has been driving me nuts. And no matter how much I play with it, I am just not getting used to it. Now, I brought up tutorials. When I first started using Pattern Keeper, I can't ever remember opening that app and then needing to look up a tutorial to figure out how to use it. It was just intuitive, where it was very easy to figure out. Now, have I run into problems with Pattern Keeper on occasion and needed to look up a tutorial on how to fix it? Yes, absolutely. Typically, it's during the upload process when it's a non-supported designer. On the other hand, when I first jumped into using MarkUp, I had to go and look up a tutorial just to figure out like how to select the stitches and like what I was doing wrong with the symbol selection. I kept being taken to the thread number list when I wasn't trying to navigate there. It was less intuitive. Again, as you start to use an app more and more, it just becomes muscle memory, and that no longer becomes a problem. But that's just some like honest feedback after navigating both of these. I do think overall Pattern Keeper looks a little bit nicer. It's just a little bit cleaner looking. Granted, I do believe Pattern Keeper has been around for a while longer. So apps are going to improve with each iteration. So it's definitely like MarkUp can get there, you know? Another thing for me, and I'm not sure if it's going to translate on the video, these symbols though on Pattern Keeper, they are clearer. Now again, I had that issue initially with using MarkUp where I wasn't uploading my patterns using the extra mode. When I did use the extra mode, the clarity of the symbols was greatly improved, but I still think the pattern looks a lot clearer on Pattern Keeper. I think the last thing that Pattern Keeper also does better are the shortcuts. The shortcut function where you can just double tap a square and it's gonna park your stitch where you want it each and every time, for me is a big one. And if you're wondering what the heck I'm even talking about right now, parking is a very specific technique that some people like to use when they're stitching, typically on full coverage projects where you're leaving like a hanging thread in a spot to pick it back up later. It's critical to note each and every parked thread and have it be accurate. Now you can park stitches also on MarkUp, but it's just a little bit clunkier where you have to hold your finger down, wait for a menu to pop up, and then initiate your selection each and every time. For many, many people, this will be a non-issue because they don't even park threads and don't care. For me, it is clunky using MarkUp to park stitches, and I'm typically using an app like this when I'm working a large full coverage pattern where I'm parking a lot of threads. Now, I hope you got the sense as we went through the settings and the interface, MarkUp really does a lot more than Pattern Keeper. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on when we go through some of the statistics and stuff that each one is pulling. But if that's something that for you is very important, MarkUp might be like a clear winner here. Now, one aspect of the interface that I like with MarkUp a lot is the tabs on the bottom where you can navigate from your chart to your key to the image. I thought that was really nice. With Pattern Keeper, if you ever want to look at the original PDF pattern or look at the reference photo, you have to go back to the home page and then kind of navigate to there. It's not an easier click from the actual chart interface itself. So for me, I think Pattern Keeper has the better user interface, but that being said, it has been around longer. I think there are improvements MarkUp could make to make it just as good, if not better. It's just my opinion. Please don't come at me if you love the MarkUp interface and you feel like it's really intuitive. I think that's great. This is not a knock on either designer, but I really do think overall Pattern Keeper is easier to use. It's a little bit nicer looking. There are some really cool features on MarkUp that Pattern Keeper doesn't have. So those are just kind of things you'll need to weigh on your own to really determine which one you would prefer using. Now, so far, far, we've only been looking at a chart that contains full cross stitches. It doesn't have any half stitches, no back stitching, no French knots. So you might be wondering how these apps work with those types of patterns. Now, for me personally, I tend to avoid patterns with back stitching, but obviously that's not going to be the case for everyone. Now, technically, neither of these apps supports back stitching, meaning you can select the back stitching and then mark it as completed on the pattern. But let's go ahead and take a look at how both of these apps navigate any type of specialty stitches. So we're going to go ahead and open up a different chart from our home screen. This is a chart that has back stitching, French knots, and half stitches. So first thing we're going to notice with our pattern, if we zoom in, you can see this symbol here. It is pretty clear that these are meant to be half stitches, and it's even showing you which corner they are placed in. So you can definitely select those and mark them as completed. It is going to fill it in as a full stitch, but that's how you would do that. Now, as we look at our pattern, there's no other specialty stitches that we're seeing, no French knots, no back stitching. So the only way to view that in Pattern Keeper is from your home page. You would choose to view the PDF. So this is going to take you to the original chart. And now as we zoom in, we can see here our French knots and all of our back stitching. From this view, you can't select any symbol to mark it as done, but this would be the way to reference where you need to place your back stitching or your French knots. To know which colors you're using, you would stay in this view of your PDF and then have to scroll to the original key to see any of your specialty stitches. And again, each chart is going to look different. That's just how I have this chart set up. So now looking at MarkUp, I have the same exact chart we just viewed in Pattern Keeper here in MarkUp. And now we can tell this is a little bit different. So just like with Pattern Keeper, when I zoom in, I can differentiate my half stitches compared to my full stitches. I can also select those to mark them as completed. The nice thing here is that because I'm like looking at the PDF itself, I can also view all of my back stitching and my French knots here from the pattern. Now I can't select my back stitching or my French knots to mark them complete. You can see it's only picking up the stitches around them, but I can at least view them so that as I'm stitching, I have that reference right there. The other nice thing is in order to view my original key to see which colors I'm using for back stitching or for my French knots, I just navigate to it from the bottom and I can see my original key right here. So I think both apps are equal in terms of their capabilities when it comes to selecting quarter or half stitches and not being able to select any back stitching or French knots. However, I think MarkUp clearly takes the win here, being that you can just view that information directly on the pattern as you're marking it up and not having to navigate out of your chart view to the home page and then have to look at the original PDF. And in MarkUp, it's also easier to just toggle to the original PDF to view the key, figure out which colors you are using for your French knots or back stitching. So the capabilities are the same, but here MarkUp really does take the win because the interface is a lot better. The last thing we're going to talk about in this comparison is statistics. Now, I will say right off the bat, MarkUp really blew Pattern Keeper out of the water on this one. And I was so pleasantly surprised because it was not something I was even thinking about or knew about when I started looking at MarkUp RX-P. So from Pattern Keeper, it's pretty minimal information in terms of what the app is tracking. So we can see our daily stitch count. We've so far stitched 315 stitches, and we can see that that's 0.8 0.55% of our total pattern. And that's really it. Again, tomorrow if I pick up my app, that will be 0, and I won't have any way to go back and see what my stitch count was from the day before. I would only be able to see how many total stitches I've completed so far and my percent complete. Now, when we take a look at markup, again, we've got this really nice info section here, and you can see just how much it's tracking for us. We see the total number of marked stitches, how many park stitches, percent complete, how many we have left to do, total stitches, and again, our total time spent stitching. And again, because it is tracking all this stuff, you get some pretty fun stats down here at the bottom, like your average stitch rate per day, estimated days to completion. It can even give you an estimated completion date and how many total days you've been stitching. Now, this is just our summary. We also have a history tab where you can see a calendar view of the stitches you did each day, both total number of stitches and your time spent stitching, and some fun graphs. Who doesn't love a graph? It also gives you some cool history here, like the date that you created the project and the date that you started stitching. You even have a notes section. So if you're someone who loves to track your project stats, MarkUp is going to be a really fun app for you to use. Now, there are some basic things that both apps do. They let you know how many total stitches your pattern is. They also track how many stitches you're doing in a day and how many stitches you've completed total and how much percentage of your chart you've finished. Now with Pattern Keeper, your daily stitch count doesn't save. So essentially if I do 300 stitches on Tuesday, Wednesday I open the app, it's going to be at 0 because it's reset, and it will start counting my stitches for Wednesday, but I can't go back and look, oh wait, how many did I do on Tuesday? Like, it's not stored anywhere. It's really just tracking your total stitch count, more or less. So I thought it was really cool when I realized that MarkUp actually tracks that information. And because it's doing that, you can pull out some really cool stats. The other thing it does, and this is something that Pattern Keeper users have been asking for ages, is it tracks your stitching time. Now, there's some inherent issues with this, right? Like if you have your app open and you step away to go get a snack or something and you forget that it's there, is it tracking that whole time that you were gone but had the app open and running as stitching time? I really don't know. I didn't jump into it deep enough, but you can just kind of get the sense there are some challenges when it comes to tracking your stitching time from an app. It's going to be a little bit dependent on the user. But again, because MarkUp is tracking this information, they've just got some really fun stats that Pattern Keeper just does not compete with. MarkUp takes the cake on this one. It was such a pleasant surprise to see that there was so much information at hand about your project. So, final thoughts. Now, I think both of these apps are absolutely incredible. I think you could use either one and be really, really happy. And I recommend using either one of these because I think it truly makes a difference with your stitching. Using apps like this make it so much more enjoyable for me. But am I going to abandon Pattern Keeper and start using MarkUp R-XP instead? At this point, no. Now, clearly, MarkUp R-XP has kind of a lot more functionality than Pattern Keeper. At times, that makes for some really cool things, like being able to estimate the number of days it's going to take you to complete a project. At other times though, I do feel like it hinders the user interface a bit, makes it less intuitive and a little bit more clunky. When you compare the price of the two, having to pay $20 each and every year to use MarkUp R-XP compared to a one-time $9 fee for Pattern Keeper, and the fact that I genuinely prefer the user interface of Pattern Keeper, I really do prefer the way to navigate the symbol selection, complete the stitches, frog the stitches, park threads, and that's primarily what I'm using the app for. So for me, with the price and the user interface, it just nudges MarkUp RX-P out of the top spot for me personally. I hope though, after you've been able to see the side-by-side comparison, that you can come up with what's really gonna work best for you. Because I am a firm believer, we are all different, our brains are all wired a little bit differently, and what I think is most important for me in my experience could be very different for you and your experience. I think they're both great apps. Again, I don't think you could go wrong using either one. And both of these apps are consistently putting out updates and new iterations. So in any of the spots where they're falling short, hopefully those are going to be addressed in future versions of the app. Now, if you really loved Pattern Keeper and you're like, man, I really want to use it on my iPad or iPhone, technically they on their website say that they are working on an iOS version of this app. Unfortunately though, that's been a message on their website for the past 5 years. So I've kind of lost faith that an iOS version of the app is ever coming, but maybe, fingers crossed. Like I said, I do personally prefer using Apple products. I like my tablet, my Samsung tablet, just fine. It is not as quick or responsive as using an iPad. It's just the truth. I like using it less. I'm sure I've said some things that some of you may really disagree with me on, and that's okay. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. One thing I did not touch on at all in this video is how to get a physical pattern into either MarkUp RX-P or Pattern Keeper. If you have experience of doing that with either of these apps, please leave some tips and tricks in the comments below. Both apps claim they can do it. Does either one do it well? I don't know. Maybe we tackle that in a follow-up video if you're interested. If you like this video and you would like to see more content like this, please do all the good things, like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, I'm Jackie from Adam Hart Cross Stitch. Thank you so much for watching. Please keep in mind, everything I talked about in this video really is a lot of just my own personal experience and opinion in using these apps. I do appreciate that I am a bit biased because, again, I've been using Pattern Keeper for years and I've only been playing around with MarkUp RX-P for the past week or so. So now that you know my kind of thoughts and opinions on these apps, I would love to hear yours. Please let me know about your experience in the comments below. And until next time, happy stitching.